Hi guys, welcome to week 6 here for our governmental accounting and nonprofit course. Kind of closing in on the last couple of chapters. Week 6 and week 7 coming our way next week. So wanted to take a few minutes and just kind of give you guys an introduction, some of the high level items that are a little unique and different here as we get going with week 6. So we're talking about auditing. We're talking about budgeting and performance measurement. So not sure how many of you have actually had auditing as a standalone course yet in your curriculum, but so I'm kind of going under the pretense that most everybody's had that already. And if not, reach out to me with your questions as we get going through the week. Definitely help you kind of navigate some of that. Okay. So one of the big exhibits here that we have in our first chapter for this week is around just accounting principles and kind of back to that. What are the things that we're looking for as auditors, right? And what are we subject to audit as a governmental agency? So state and local governments there in that first column. GASB financial statements, that's what we're held accountable for. So that's what we need to make sure that we're producing. And so our external financial audit here in the state of Ohio, that's usually facilitated by the state auditor's office. Some of those are privatized through CPA firms. It just kind of depends on the organization and the structure and the makeup. But in any event, those financial statements need to be prepared following the governmental accounting standards. So that's what we're looking at there in that state and local governments. In Category A, that's just that high level. Highest level of authority that we have, Tier 1 authority. So the most important thing for state and local governments is following GASB. For federal government entities, the FASB, right? So the statements of financial or federal financial accounting standards, okay? And so then the Tier 2 level. So what do we then find there? Okay, so we take one step down from the actual official accounting standards. What's the next level of guidance and help as we prepare financial statements? So we have technical bulletins, implementation guides, and other literature from the AICPA, okay, for those state and local governments. For federal governments, we have, again, some technical bulletins, some other interpretations, and we kind of go down that, right? But remember that top tier, so the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, statements of federal financial accounting standards, okay, those are it. So if those clearly tell us what we need to be doing in those areas, that's the end of the story, and that's what we're going to be held responsible to be following, okay? So a little bit just to kind of help draw some differentiation, if you will, between some of the different types of services that we might be requesting as a governmental agency. So financial audits, okay, so that's just a full-blown financial statement audit. They're going to come in, they're going to test the balances, they're going to do their planning processes, they're going to test their transactions, they're going to do a full-blown financial audit and issue an opinion about whether or not we've followed the accounting standards that we're required to follow as a city government, as a federal government, whatever that body is, okay? That's kind of Tier 1, full-blown financial statement audit, okay? Attestation engagements, that's where we can kind of do a one-off, okay? So the services that we're engaging in is that we did these things, we followed this process, and the auditor, the person doing that engagement, is saying that they're attesting to that we followed that basically to the letter of the law. Not a financial statement, so not GASB financial statements, but instead some other type of engagement around them providing attestation that we did what we were supposed to. Performance audits, kind of one more tier down from attestation agreements, where single audits, we'll get into some of the criteria for that in just a second, but that's where state or local governments or nonprofits get money from the federal government, and depending on what we're going to look at here in just a second, they then also have to have a single audit, which is a little more in depth than just a financial audit. And so it's a little bit more in the compliance area, and making sure that the money is being spent in proper ways as it flows from the federal government into these other governmental agencies. So we'll take a look here. This is just an excerpt right out of the chapter. Is it a state or local government? If it is, or a nonprofit, did they expend at least $750,000 in federal awards during the year? So notice what that says. It says expend, okay? So the idea here is it's the expenses, it's the how much did you spend in federal awards this year? So if you received $800,000, but you only spent $700,000, okay, well, that expenditure didn't surpass the $750,000, okay? So it's the expenditures that we're after here. If no, then we're not. Then we're kind of out of the loop, okay? If we did we expend from only one program or program clusters? So what did that expenditure look like? Where did it reside within our organization? If it was from only one program or a program cluster, perform either single audit or program specific audit. And then if it wasn't from only one program or a program cluster, then we would actually perform the single audit, okay? And so that's some of the decision tree that we have to kind of navigate when we're talking about the single audit. And one of the big things that happened in the last few years, right, is the payroll protection plan, all the coronavirus support, and that funding that was made available, and then different organizations spent that money. So that was a big hot button as that stimulus money was flowing out from the federal government, was a lot of concerns around the single audit requirements that some entities might be falling into that previously were not. So budgeting, okay. Budgeting in a traditional business, we're talking mostly about the planning, right? What direction are we going to head? But for our government entities, there's also this compliance factor that comes into play around making sure that we're following the rules and establishing our budgets and doing the due course of action that's required to because we are a governmental body, okay? So a couple of different types of budgets that we can have. A line item budget, that's kind of where we go line item by line item. What did we spend last year, and kind of up or down, kind of move, line item by line item. What do we need to kind of tweak and move from kind of like previous years? A zero-based budget is where we basically kind of wipe the slate clean. We have our lines, but we have no balances. And so we're going to go line by line and say, okay, how much do we need to spend in wages? How much do we need to spend in payroll taxes? How much do we need to spend in fire and police protection? How much do we need to spend for this program, for that program? So we're kind of like reassessing and reevaluating everything. We're kind of starting with a zero base, a blank slate, okay? Performance budgeting, really looking there at inputs and outputs for the organization as a whole, kind of from the whole perspective. What do we want to achieve? and what are the inputs and outputs that we're going to need to make that happen. Okay, where the program budget is more at like a programmatic level. What do we need to provide this level of police protection? Okay. What do we need? So it's similar to performance, but kind of a little narrower focus. Okay. Entrepreneurial budgeting. That's more what we might call like what we see in commercial businesses or for-profit companies, where we're looking at it from that more business orientation, where program budgeting and performance budgeting are really kind of more from that governmental perspective. Okay, so the other kind of big area is this idea around service efforts and accomplishments, also referred to as C. So what do we see in there? The no pun intended is that we have our category 1, the external report on performance information. So we're kind of sharing that out, and then what performance information to report on. So what is it that we're actually sharing around our performance indicators? And then communication of performance information. So there's some example reports in the chapter reading that you'll see there. So I just invite you to kind of peruse through that. After you've had a chance to look that over, let me know what kinds of questions you might have around any of the content. So have a great rest of your day, and keep up the great work in the courtroom. Take care, guys.